Hey, what's up everyone, welcome back to another Sims 4 video on this channel. Today we're building one of your suggestions, which was the Goth tiny house. As you can see, today's video is a stop motion, but now let me tell you guys a bit more about the build itself. So as I said before, this is a tiny house, so it doesn't take up more than 64 tiles. So you get all the perks from the tiny living expansion if you have that. The build is intended for 2 Sims, so we have a double bed in there. I initially wanted to do a speed build, but figuring out the interior layout was kind of complicated and took a while, so I decided to go for a stop motion instead. And this way the video is not like 40 minutes long. So this time I also didn't do the landscaping and exterior first, but I built basically the first floor, did the interior, moved on to the second floor, did the interior, finished the rooftop patio and the tower, then moved on to the landscaping. If you want to see any particular part of this build, there are timestamps in the description, and of course I will showcase the finished build at the end of the video. Moving on to the interior, as you can see, this is the entrance slash living room slash kitchen area, which is a weird thing to have in a house like this, because I feel like open kitchen areas are not really common in older houses, but since this house is so small, there was basically no way around it, and I personally like how it looks. I didn't want to make this build too dark, so I decided to go with darker wood tones, but also lots of green and some other colors, for example some shades of blue, which you will see later on. But I also included some white elements, as you can see here with the kitchen counters. The kitchen is actually quite small and I initially didn't want to have it here, but I needed to save some space for the dining area, so we also have a built-in fridge right underneath the staircase. I mean, you can always use ladders to save some space, but I feel like an older house like this would have a staircase, and to be honest, I don't know a lot of people who have ladders in their homes like at all. Maybe to reach the attic or the rooftop patio like I did with this build. So as I said before, I used a little bit of blue for the curtains here, but also for the couch. It's not a whole lot, just a little bit. I wasn't too sure about the blue at first, but I kept it because I think it looks quite nice. And with the first floor finished, we're moving on to the second floor, and as you can see, the roofing here is quite complicated. I decided to go for some kind of mint green roofing, because as I said before, I didn't want this build to be too dark, and we also have a lot of black elements here as a contrast. And this house is actually my second draft, so I built a very similar one beforehand, and it was way too dark. We had black walls, we had black pillars, black windows, black roofing, and it was just a bit boring, so I decided to go for some lighter tones with the gray here and simply used all the black elements here into green ivy as contrast colors. So I'm quite pleased how this turned out, and I hope you guys can see that I tried to make this house as unique as possible. And to be honest, I spent way too much time on this house, especially since it's just a tiny home. I think this is a 20 by 15 lot, so it probably shouldn't take that long, but I wanted the house to be as good as it could be, and I hope this is noticeable. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this already, but this house was a suggestion for a Halloween build, and I thought about who would live here, and I came to the conclusion that it should probably be some kind of vampire journalist, because we have the typewriter here. Also, it was Halloween, so I was looking for some occult creature, and I feel like the house is a bit too sophisticated for a werewolf, but you could also argue for a spellcaster. But to be honest, this house doesn't really feel or look like it was built for Halloween, so I decided to still upload it because it feels more like a fall build to me, and I think you can use this for basically any sim anywhere. So moving on to the bedroom area. As I said before, this house is intended for 2 Sims, so we have of course a double bed. Your Sims will have to scoot over, but it's fully functional. So the door you see here in the back leads to the bathroom, and what's kind of funny is that I forgot about the bathroom, and as I tried to figure out how to fill these nooks here and fill this area up, I noticed that I had no bathroom, and I simply separated this area here from the bedroom, which was also kind of necessary because it looked really odd. And then I had just enough space for a toilet, a sink and a shower, and I really wish there would be enough space for a bathtub, because with older houses like this, I feel like bathtubs are more fitting, but that's just my personal taste, of course. So as I said before, we also have a rooftop patio area here. There's not a lot of space, but I managed to include some skill building items, for example the chess table, a telescope, and also a small bench for your Sims to sit on. You Sims can reach this area by using a ladder inside this tower-like structure here, and this time I wanted to use the ladder because there was also no other way to get up here. I played around with some outdoor staircases, but it looked kind of odd and unrealistic. I also didn't want to waste like 8 tiles for the staircase being functional, and this build is actually not that big at all. I managed to break it down to 64 tiles as I said before, but I think it's almost impossible to build a house like this with only 32 tiles, because you need so many tiles for the small towers and the nooks, which make this house look interesting, that there isn't really a lot of space inside, because the house is basically full of nooks and crannies, and these are really hard to furnish sometimes, especially if you want to have a double bed or use some larger furniture. For example, the couch here. I also made my own life harder by adding all those windows first, so I had to basically furnish around them, which is always a pain, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. Actually, if you're not making videos for YouTube and just building for fun or anything, I would recommend starting with the interior and build the exterior last, so you can add the windows later on. I know it's kind of hard. I also jump around between exterior and interior usually, which you see in my speed builds as well. But windows and doors are always a problem if you place them first. So as you can see, we moved on to the landscaping portion of this video. I made it a bit faster so I could include everything here, which is not really a problem with this stop motion, but I sometimes go a little overboard and my landscaping can get quite excessive, so I usually cut out the parts that are less important, like adjusting the terrain paint or placing like 500 bushes as a base layer for the rest of the plants. This time I thought it would be fitting to go with darker plants mostly, and I also used some white and royal purple flowers, which I think look very nice here. So if you guys want to download this house to play with it or just look at it or whatever, it's of course in the gallery. My ID is in the description below as always. If you want to place it on the same lot, it's called Little Falls Nook. I think it's a 20 by 20. It's also in the description below. Price is exactly 100k, so I wouldn't say this is too expensive. Also the pond here, which is a debug object or life edit object you can use to fish, which is not functional here because I used so many plants around it to blend it in that there's basically no way to access it. I would still consider this build fully functional because the pond is not really a necessity and only a part of landscaping in my opinion. And with that, we're at the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like, consider subscribing if you're new to the channel, leave a comment if you want to tell me anything or have any questions. I always appreciate feedback. And now let's take a look at the finished build. See you guys next time. Peace out.